Hi and welcome. Today we have a very special lecture. We have a very snowy day here in New York City. Hopefully you're inside someplace safe and a little bit toasty and warm, just like I am in the studio here today. Well, we have a very interesting lecture here because, of course, we have a pandemic that we're in the middle of, and yet we may have some folks that have been out of the workforce for a while, and they have a, say, special set of things that we have to think about in terms of challenges that they have to overcome. They may be looked at as being slightly different or maybe a less valuable product, if you want to think about it that way. Just as a reminder, I'm having lectures twice a week at the moment. Just had on Tuesday my LinkedIn Showplace. That's available over my YouTube channel if you'd like to see it. Today is returning to the workforce after that long break or sabbatical. This coming Tuesday, that's a Tuesday at 5 p.m. That's Tuesday the 23rd. Very special presentation on how to be a presentation guru. And that's really for your career, for your job search, for your business, all sorts of ways today that we have to up our game in how we present ourselves. That'll be on Tuesday, all the behind secrets to look just like this. Then on Thursday of next week, that's a 12 noon lecture. That will be my interview intervention, including all the tips for video interviewing, all the things we have to take into consideration for today. Now, today's lecture is returning to the workforce after a long break or sabbatical. This is part of how you're going to take back control, is not being afraid of the story itself, but we do have to prepare ourselves to tell the story. Now, as we begin to think about going back into the workforce and whether we've been out of the workforce because of the pandemic or before the pandemic, whatever the length of time has been, if we implement a proper plan, we're going to have a very different outcome. Now, I have a whole Supercharging Your Job Search lecture you can talk and look at that'll help you a lot with this, but I did want you to be aware of this funnel. Let me just bring this full center so you can see it just a little bit larger with the small print. You know, as you think about this, the amount of activity you're going to put into your job search, all at the top, that means going out and talking and meeting with a lot of different people. That raises the awareness about you. That begins to generate interest in a subset of those people. And out of that, some consideration about you and eventually toward an offer. But typically only comes from juggling about 10 different companies or opportunities that you're pursuing at the same time. It's like speed dating in a way, with your goal being, how do I generate one new interview per week? By the way, that is a very tough goal. That's not an easy goal. Now, in returning to the workforce and resetting our career story, we're going to have to deal with perception. Perception is reality. Right now, we have a different perception in our head from being away from the workforce. How do I fit in? How can I be just like the others? Well, I might say you don't want to be just like the others, cookie cutter, interchangeable, because if you are just like these things, maybe I'll come a little bit larger here. If you are just like these things and interchangeable, that's great if that's what I'm looking to hire. Great for me, by the way, because I'm definitely going to pay you less. If you don't want less, well, the person next to you wants less, or someone in this line is taking less. Really, what you have to do is not only position yourself to be interchangeable like those folks, a portion of the cookie cutter nature like those folks, but you also have to be somehow different, special, unique. And that's how you get a different set of responsibilities assigned to you, a different compensation package, because you're this product and you have to be unique, not simply interchangeable to some title that they may be looking for. So think about all those things that may determine how people feel about your brand, which is really how you separate yourself from others, how you either are or are going to be the standout in your field, and simply change reality by changing perception. This is not about misrepresenting. This is about opening up a door for opportunity, an opportunity that you intend to go deliver value for an organization. You have to take all of your background, all of your experiences. I don't care that it may have been a year or two or three or whatever it might be break. By the way, this lecture came out of working with a client that had a 7-year break and then suddenly had to restart their career and thought, oh, how no one will hire me. Like, wow, that's a phenomenal background. I bet you someone will hire you, but we're going to have to work on this confidence first. We're going to have to get by that. Really, you have to take all the pieces of your background and filter it through this singular question. Why is it going to be the best business decision they're going to make today if they choose to hire you? And if you can answer that question and keep the story centered on those items, boy, all those small little changes change perception dramatically. Now, if you haven't seen me before, John Crant, author, career coach, and speaker, resume and LinkedIn guru as well. Let me tell you just a little bit about my background. Very important that you understand the background of each person that's trying to teach you something. That way you can properly parse and value and choose which pieces of that information to implement for yourself, which ones align with what you're after. My background, 7 or 8 years in outside recruitment. That's a traditional headhunter on a desk, having to go into the competitor company, lure out the competitor. Really very similar to being a glorified dating guru. Very, very similar, in fact. Then spent 3.5 years the entire time as the national trainer. So 100 office recruiting system, as each office would hire potential recruiters, they'd come into my 90-day program to teach them how hiring actually works, which is really not the way people think it works. Otherwise, we wouldn't need a lecture series just like this. Of course, ended up being VP over all those offices before moving out on my own. And for the last 10 years, I give lectures just like this one for the New York Public Library's Job Search Central, for the New York State Department of Labor's several different offices, Varick and Brooklyn and some other locations, Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program, Harvard Business School Club of New York City, among many others. That's what I do, along with working with clients. No secret there, helping individual clients reinvent their resume and reinvent their LinkedIn profiles, and really coaching them through those tough challenges they're navigating in their job search. Of course, you can see my book as well there. A couple of resources over on LinkedIn before we dive further into today's content. These will help you. Just click right from my profile. You can get to my articles, keys to supercharging your job search, avoiding the biggest mistake in job search. That is time mismanagement. Only resource we really have. And yet, as job seekers, we tend to squander it because we tend to sit on the internet, hitting that darn button, submit, 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 until we're so submissive it's like a Friday night waiting for that darn phone to ring. Also, how to not let your resume become resume roadkill. That's an important one. Now, if your LinkedIn is not up to speed, we're going to touch on LinkedIn today, but this is not the LinkedIn lecture. Right on my website, halfway down the page, selfrecruiter.com, you can watch the whole thing, see myself, see the slides, adjust who's larger. Really use it as a step-by-step tutorial to build out a 3-dimensional sales brochure for yourself. That's what your LinkedIn really needs to be. Now, for the entire series, it's about becoming a self-recruiter. Today, we're going to turn this lens toward all the specific challenges. When you've been out of the workforce for a while, there are very specific challenges in the conversation that you're going to have to deal with. If you choose not to deal with them, they're going to put those little check marks against you. If you deal with them, they may go, oh, wipe away that concern here. Oh, wipe away that concern here. By the way, that is our goal when interviewing, is to remove and wipe away the concerns. Their objections to us should excite us because that means they're testing us, because they'd never waste the oxygen if they didn't think, oh, maybe, I'm going to have to ask you this. Let's be careful. So the core parts of becoming a self-recruiter are networking in a very different way. That means, yes, using LinkedIn, expanding things exponentially versus the real world, if we put it that way. But it also requires keeping one eye on that toughest competitor imaginable. There's 4, 5, 6 people that, my gosh, if they're going after the job, forget it. That person, oh my gosh, we can beat those people very, very easily with a little bit of planning, strategy, and everything else. But you know what? If we don't do any of that, they're going to beat us every single time because they're shiny, sparkly, whatever it might be. And they're going to draw the focus, even though they may not be as great a product for that role as we are. It's your job to be persuasive and engaging and be confident. And I know that if we've been on a sabbatical not working, these are the last things we feel. We feel out of touch and we feel shredded in our confidence. We're going to have to get over some of that. So here's the core items we're going to talk about today. We're going to come back to each one of these, so have no fear. Elephant in the room, that's really your sabbatical itself. We can't pretend it doesn't exist. How do we handle that on the resume? We're going to have to talk about all those things. The unspoken objections, even if they're nice enough not to actually say these objections to you, they're thinking them if you've been out on a sabbatical. So we have to handle their concerns even if they don't bring them up, so that we wipe away that concern off their list of concerns. Here's the positive, here's the concerns, get all those things wiped away. Ready or not, your non-work life is going to change. Probably didn't really think a lot about that, but your life has evolved to a lot of things that aren't work. And now we're going to have to talk about all those things and how that can come crashing down and ruin your chance to successfully get back on board. Of course, we're going to have to talk a little bit about preparing the marketing materials. This is a sales opportunity. You need to go sell yourself. That's job search. Also a little bit of dating process mixed in. And we'll also include the strategies for how you begin to overcome those objections and really integrate some of that really into your messaging so that it becomes a little bit more like breathing. The more you can do the steps of job search effectively, the same way you breathe, almost without thought, you begin to get a different result. Of course, moving toward interview, and next week is the full interview intervention lecture on Thursday. Moving toward interview, you're going to have to prepare for a few things there, things that you haven't been ready for in the past. This is a very new world, a very remote world at the moment for quite a lot of folks. Your follow-up, especially having been on a sabbatical, is going to be a key part of your test, probably more than the other job seekers that really rarely ever follow up, which is really troublesome in itself. Now, as we chart your course, we're going to have to think about the rules. We're going to also have to break some of the rules. I'm a big believer in changing any rule that does not work for you. Must apply online. Okay. Well, if you haven't seen me before, let's just be clear up front. I am not a fan of applying online. By the way, I would be. I'd love it if it worked consistently for people. It works for a few people, like getting struck by lightning. Few people get struck by lightning every day. Nobody wants to be one of those folks. And yet in job search, we're all hoping to be struck by the lightning. So I think we have to change some of those rules and maybe consider doing things in a different way. That means unusual thought, unconventional, unexpected. We're going to have creative interpretation and these moments of clarity from the unconventional thinking, the dots being connected. And we see, oh, I can go get my interview without ever applying for the job. Actually, many of my clients go get the interview without ever having applied for the job because they go directly to the decision maker. A very scary thing. Even more scary, we've been out on a sabbatical. Yeah, you haven't worked in 2 years. We know any objection that could throw to us. We're going to have to get ready for those things and all the things that we're avoiding. Well, let's go back to the biggest thing, the biggest elephant in the room, your sabbatical itself. There may be a number of people listening, all with different things in their background, all different reasons. We're going to get to some of those reasons, and some of them may be your reasons. But the biggest thing is we haven't been working. I don't care if that's 5 months or 5 years or a year or whatever it may be. Everybody's got a different challenge to overcome. How do we close the gap on the sabbatical? Well, first off, don't explain anything. On the resume, let me be clear, on the resume, I'd recommend if the last 5 years or 5 months, whatever it might be, you've been on a sabbatical, you simply put the word sabbatical, 2015 to 2020. Did you notice it's over? The sabbatical has to end. If you're going to go back to work, it has to end. And yet absolutely no description as to what the sabbatical was about. That must be saved for conversation. That's not the story, by the way. That's one of the objection things. Oh, what's that all about? Then with all that additional expanded space, go back and tell the best darn career story, the best darn story of contribution in each and every one of those roles. So that they go, wow, how do I not give a powerhouse? I have to have them at least in the conversation. And then you're in the conversation and absolutely the sabbatical's going, gosh, so tell me about this sabbatical. It's coming up on how we're going to answer that. Get the conversation. People aren't going to give you the conversation just because they feel sorry for you. So we don't need to include the details. Tell them why you're the best darn product and irresistible. And my gosh, then you begin to get the conversation. Now, so we're all on the same page. What is this darn sabbatical? Well, what did it used to mean? Period of leave. Maybe we're familiar with it from the educational end. These teachers, professors, after a certain length of tenure, maybe they get to go take a year or two of sabbatical to go enrich themselves before they come back to their profession. But really in the modern world, it's migrated to become really any type of a break that we may have from career. Let me get a little bit of my coffee. That's the sabbatical itself. You simple word, nothing else. So what do we feel about this sabbatical? Well, all these things here, I don't actually have to say these dreadful things. They're in your mind. You feel them already. You're thinking other people are probably looking at you this way. And now seeing them on screen, you were like, oh, it was right. I was right. They're thinking of me this way. Okay. Why don't you counter these things by showing them the opposite of these things? So first off, we have to get over it, throw these things out the window, and get out of our own way. Can you think of a good use of a sabbatical, a good use of stepping away from your career? What are some of the good uses? Well, maybe I could write a book, or maybe I could do some once-in-a-lifetime travel, maybe when it's non-pandemic time again, or maybe I need to care for a loved one, or take care of a child or a parent, or maybe there's a certain thing going on in the community that I need to help with, or maybe I've gone back to school to enrich the value of the product itself, myself, become something new, reinvent myself. You know what? Maybe I've just been working nonstop for so long, I needed a career break. A career break. Oh, how dare you? Or maybe we needed to raise our family, or some once-in-a-lifetime opportunity got cast on Survivor or The Amazing Race, or who knows what it might be. But still, no matter what, we're going to feel guilty. People that stayed on the treadmill are going to look over at us with a frown, and we're going to feel guilty again. You know what? We have to get away from this idea that we're supposed to work until we keel over. That's the usual, customary, expected. You can take a little more control. Also becomes a little bit of a rut. You know, dynamic growth in your career tends to come from a few strategic shifts over the course of your career. And if you're too afraid to make a few shifts, if you're too afraid to maybe reinvent yourself, sometimes the right opportunity that was really meant for you all along doesn't come along. So what are those unspoken objections that I keep referring to? Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of things to object to you. I think you're probably uncommitted. Yeah, I mean, you haven't worked in how long? I think you're uncommitted. You're probably undependable, no longer stable. Your skills have gone downhill. I think your skills are suffering, probably unreliable. I think you're probably defective in some way. I know, not very pleasant to hear those things. You know who's defective in some way? Everyone. That's the nature of being a human being. We're all defective in some way. We're all unique, depending on how you look at the word defective. So our job, whether it's a giant wart over here or whatever, is to diminish the negatives, accentuate the positives. Maybe lighting and camera and those kind of things help. And yeah, they're going to think these things, but I have to demonstrate through conversation, demonstrate through my outreach, demonstrate by understanding it's a date. Where's my excitement all about them? So I say nonsense to these things. Yes, these concerns are there. Be engaging, be confident, overcome these things. That's how you go right back to work. By the way, the client that I originally put all this lecture together afterward, having gone through that experience, you know, they worked on Wall Street. Never worked in compliance, by the way. But suddenly there was this wonderful opportunity at Goldman Sachs that opened up in compliance. They'd never worked in compliance. They'd worked on different trading floor jobs. You can imagine, if you know Goldman Sachs, you can imagine all the people that weren't in compliance in Goldman wanted that Goldman compliance job. All the people at the competitors to Goldman in compliance wanted the Goldman competitor compliance job. Ooh, I like that one. And yet my client got that after years and years of not working, by going after it, by understanding how to position themselves as the very, very best product that's there, with a different level of passion than the others. Having done some good uses with their own sabbatical, they were ready to now channel that energy and deliver like a dynamo, which is exactly what they did. Circumstances have changed, now allowing me the opportunity to fully return to the workforce. I'm excited by how I can contribute to the team. Did you notice I didn't have to disclose a single thing here? Doesn't mean they're not going to ask you, and we have to think about what we choose to disclose or don't choose to disclose. Your job is to be the cheerleading champion for yourself. So again, let's go back to a little bit more digging around on these unspoken objections. Let me get a little more drink. So first off, are you ready to commit to 50 weeks a year? I hope not. That 2 weeks vacation is a scam. But we have policy. You only get the third week after the third year or fifth year. Fifth year. Statistically, we're never getting to the fifth year again. We change jobs about every 4.5 years now. So if we're never getting to the fifth year again, does that mean you're going to work 50 weeks a year until you're 6 feet under? Doesn't make a lot of sense. But again, they go, oh, no, policy. Well, that's easy to get away from. When they go, policy. Oh, totally understand. I seem happy, don't I? I give them an agree but disagree technique. They give me, but it's 2 weeks. It's policy at your level. You don't get the third week till I totally understand. Just as if I'm in agreement with it, which I'm not. And then I directly disagree with it with what I say next. And I simply go, perfectly comfortable with a side letter agreement for the additional 2 weeks. Side letter agreement? You're familiar with side letter agreements? I am now. Yes, that just means a side letter agreement between the manager and myself for the additional 2 weeks so that the policy stays as is. But I'm getting my 4 weeks or whatever it is that I deem that I need if I believe I'm valuable enough. That is key. I have to be valuable enough. By the way, let's also be clear on something. You do not negotiate any of these things, salary, things like vacation, the fact that, I booked a vacation in April. Can I still take that when I'm starting the job April 1st? All those things you save to negotiate only after they put the ring on the finger. Really, really important. So the other concerns, are you ready to go? I don't think you're really ready for 9 to 5 again. Although we're not quite in a real 9 to 5 world. I think most people these days are working much longer than 9 to 5. Although I'd say a good percentage might think it's worth the trade-off for the additional benefits they've gotten, reducing commute, everything else. Now, which goals are going to come first? I need the work goals to come first. That's another concern. I think you've been so concerned on your own goals for so long, you're going to have a hard time adapting to my work goals I need you for. I don't know where your mind is. There's a concern they're going to have. And of course, I don't know if you have the energy to go back full time. I mean, there's a lot of different obstacles. So those are some of them. And really, the core item, are you ready and able to handle the level of stress that's going to be required with this level of change? That in itself makes a lot of people returning to the workforce fail in the first few months because they didn't prepare for the dynamic shift, for the reinforcement to their commitment. I'm ready. I'm excited to get my career back on track and how I can contribute to the team. Rah, rah, rah. Number one cheerleader. Now, our non-work life is about to change. We have to think about that because if we're going to upend everything and go back to the workforce, we have a few things to consider so that when we do return to the workforce, it doesn't all collapse on us. Who's affected by your decision to return to this workforce? So it could be any of the people on this list. I don't really have to read it out loud for you, but I bet you have not just been sitting home with your feet up on the desk having bonbons. You've been actually doing something, involved in something. Someone's now depending on you for the way life has been structured. And yet, if you're going to step away for 9 to 5 again, well, who's going to do all that stuff that you were doing? How is that going to be divided up so that really there's not a storm at home behind the scenes? So whatever you have been doing, we're going to have to make a plan for those items so they transition off your plate or to a shared plate, because success is determined by all the preparation we put in. If we develop the strategy, the plan, if we understand a sales funnel, which of course you can see in the Supercharging Your Job Search lecture, and we translate all of our wonderful story over to our marketing materials properly and utilize that single line sabbatical with no explanation, it has to end, whatever it might be, then we'll be successful in potentially elevating our product, creating enough interest for our product through the proper use of personal branding. And then we're going to carry the changes in the way we present across everything here. Now, if you need work on the resume, I've got the resume renovation lecture, deep dive on the resume itself. By the way, we're in a world where no one will read. And typically when I'm at the New York Public Library, I have to say that all the time and wait to get struck by lightning. But, that's the modern world. People won't read. So If I'm creating someone's resume, not a single sentence on the entire resume. Why would you have a sentence on a resume in a world where people don't read? Not even logical. Same kinds of things. Our communication is going to have to evolve. That's part of how you take control of the discussion in the modern world, with these tiny little changes that change everything. So check out the renovation lecture for your resume, where you'll understand this 3 to 5 seconds of the resume and how they're going to be valuing you. And you'll center the story correctly on things that affect performance. Yeah, if there's dollar signs, percentages, everything else, that's great. Otherwise, we're going to use visual language, read, develop office workflow. Oh my gosh, that sounds, I can imagine it. Of course, in education, we have to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, because you know what 3 credits shy of your degree is? No degree. By the way, I don't really care. Don't mishear that. Education is very, very important. Please don't go into crazy debt over it. Not worth that either. But get as much as you can get. And then understand at some point what they're going to hire you for, what they're going to desire you for, what they're going to compensate you for is what you've built to that point. Not some maybe silly decision you may have made 20, 30 years ago or whatever the time frame may be. Another big unspoken concern for you and really everybody these days is now you've been out of the workforce. You certainly have not adapted in this last year to working remotely. So are you even capable of stepping into a world where you have to work remotely? That's going to be an enormous fear of any hiring person. Can you be effective? Can you be focused? Guess what? All of your outreach, all of your video interviewing, which is part of today, we can't get away from it. All of it will be a demonstration of your ability to work remotely, as long as you can hold focus, understand what you're communicating, and continually remove obstacles. So there's a lot of ways to get past the remote experience. You see what's on screen here, all different kinds of ways that we can talk about having offsite vendor experience or clients, or maybe offsite partners, or maybe we presented at conferences or done webinars or even conference calls. All ways, even if it was done in-house originally, to convey that we can work in a more remote way. In terms of your resume, your first goal is to get that resume into stack 1, or really it never gets a deep look. So once it is in stack 1, your next challenge becomes, how do I take that, say, single sheet of paper, that's the resume renovation lecture, single sheet of paper that it's a cheat sheet of all the best pieces of my background. How do I take that short telling of my story, take it over to LinkedIn and transform it into a 3-dimensional sales brochure? That's the building your professional network with LinkedIn and how to use it for your job search. You know, LinkedIn, in my view, it's the de facto social networking website for our work life. Almost exactly like Facebook, except this one's for our career. So if you think about the back end of LinkedIn, and all the details are in my LinkedIn lecture right on the SelfRecruiter website, halfway down the page. Well, you get this 3-level network. It's very, very powerful. I have to begin to network and utilize it in a different way. I have to begin to use social media. No matter what we think of social media, with what's gone on in the last year, we have to utilize it to our benefit to push our story as a product so someone hires us in our career. Has to be gentle, not too advertising. Has to be living and breathing your profession. The other reason why social media matters are the things you see up on screen here, most important of which is likely the second from the last. Proper, effective use of social media is how you stay on the top of people's minds that you feel you probably have no contact with, but they happen to gently, figuratively being touched on the shoulder because they're looking over your shoulder, seeing what you're reading, doing, sharing, attending, and they're amazed sometimes if you're living and breathing the profession. Part of the taking control, part of getting them to think about what you want them to think about you. Information is the new currency, and we can do an awful lot to seed information about ourselves through the use of LinkedIn. Now, in the LinkedIn lecture itself, I usually talk about the opposite, how we extract information from LinkedIn to help us in our job search. But in returning to the workforce, you have to push more message. You have to reestablish your value. And so you're going to seed small things out there to this network. Here's my numbers on LinkedIn, really from today, 11,837. 3 levels out, that's a pool greater than 21 million people. 21 million people. So every time I share something, it has the chance to land on any one of those 21 million desks. Let's be super clear. It's not going to land on 21 million desktops, but it will land on some of those, all based on how good the quality of my content is judged. If they think other people will like your content that you're sharing, they put it in front of new audiences. Then to brand, or in your case, rebrand your career, you're going to take a series of items, a series of shares. And I have a whole social media marketing job search career evolution lecture you can watch as well that will walk you through how to build a social media plan. Yeah, it does take 2 hours of homework to build the plan. And then it takes 2 minutes per day. Wake up in the morning, get my first cup of coffee, copy, paste, share. Wait, I need another cup of coffee. Oh, copy, paste, share. Oh, it's lunchtime. Copy, paste, share. Coffee hound in the afternoon. Oh, copy, paste, share. End of the day, I'm also done with my job search. Copy, paste, share. 4, 5, 6 times a day in 2 total minutes, if I do it properly. And then I let these things seed out automatically. When I share to LinkedIn, I automatically let it flow to Twitter, never having to visit Twitter in my life if I don't want to. Why is Twitter so important to job search? Because a lot of companies have stopped posting jobs. They've stopped posting jobs because a gazillion people send in their resumes that aren't right. And you know what? They've already learned to think like a detective. I can go to Twitter and I can search 4, 5, or 6 words. Give me any industry, any level, any position, a few minutes to think about it. 4, 5, 6 words to find, oh, not capable and qualified. It's like cat hair in my mouth. I'm looking for the best of the best of the best. There's a handful of people that are really, really good. By the way, it's so easy to find them. All you have to do is imagine, well, what would the very best one of whatever that little widget is, what would the best one be reading, doing, sharing, attending? It's a pretty specific list. If they're the best, they're going to certain conferences, they're reading certain books. I hope you are too, if you're considering positioning yourself as the best of the best. And over time, you see the effect of having these pieces of media go out. Obviously, mine are all about me and what I do, but yours are going to be all about your desired profession, the challenges within the industry, the players within the industry, and 4, 5, 6 words of the comments about your reaction to those things. You become your finger on the pulse, living and breathing the profession. By the way, if you need help with LinkedIn, I think you know how to find this right on my website. Now, networking, that's what LinkedIn is, by the way. Getting in a room doesn't really work well for most of us, especially, of course, these days. Networking now is this exponential different event over on LinkedIn. So watch the full LinkedIn lecture, link with as many people as possible, and begin to use social media marketing to position yourself as this person that's right up to speed, even though there was a gap. Finger on the pulse. I know everything going on, probably because now I have the time to know everything going on. You want to seem up to date? You want to be seen as knowing what's going on in your field and you haven't worked in 5 years? Become the information aggregator. You may not feel, well, I feel I'm out of touch with my industry. Great. Presents a wonderful educational opportunity. Go and absorb everything going on in your industry, everything going on with the top 5 players, everything going on with the top 5 challenges within the space. By the time you digest all of that, begin to regurgitate it with some opinion, well, first off, you're going to be rebuilding your own confidence. And secondly, you are filling in the gap until you are finger on the pulse, know what's going on, simply by being the aggregator, the person that collects just the right things going on, always sharing and commenting. By the way, that will draw people right to your LinkedIn profile. Here's a few of my shares just to begin to think about how you begin to share and how that can have a tremendous effect on you. Look at this, 1,600 views. You know, those are clicks, by the way. If 1,600 people clicked on this, thousands and thousands actually saw it. That's the basis of how advertising works. Or look at this one, 2,200 people clicked on this one. It's like, oh, I wish I could get that all the time. Or oh, here I am up at the Voice of Harlem Radio, WHCR FM. And gosh, my book and my coffee made the shot, but I stayed behind the camera on that one. Or sometimes even understanding how you balance and break your branding. Now, as an example, I exert a lot of branding control And full disclosure, my other half is creative director, so I certainly get a lot of help there. But I can't always post the same darn picture. So running out to one of my lectures one time, I'm like, I have to find a new picture, And someone was sitting in the front row of one of my lectures. It was toward the end. I'm suddenly showing my ridiculously long email signature. I'm going to look at this thing here. And I'm blushing, and I look at this photo and I hate it. I'm like, I'm greasy. Where's my hair? Why is my nose so big? You know, all those things we don't like. And it got a ridiculous 1,500 views. Don't be afraid to be a little bit of a human being on occasion, break your brand just a little bit. Being a human being sells. And by the way, as I teach in many of my other lectures, and you'll hear quite a bit in next week's interview lecture, I don't hire you because of the capable and qualified piece. Let's be clear, would not hire anyone if I didn't think they were capable and qualified. That's not the decision process. That's expected from every individual I might look at. Why I hire you is, why are you interesting? What makes you tick? What do you live and breathe? What are you all about? Let's recap what I think job search really is. I think we have to create a real plan, which is not sitting on the internet looking at job postings. To me, that's tragedy. About 50% of all job postings you see are not real in the first place, because those advertising spots were sold up to 1 year ago. They just have to be used up. And that ends up with them having no idea 6 months or up to a year ago what they're hiring today. And they just, put this in there, put this in there. Something they may hire someday. Little relevance on today, ends up with about half of them just being window shopping. So to me, I think you reverse the entire process. You select the organizations or companies that you have a burning desire. I have to work there. Okay, great. By the way, you having to work there can't be because you see some open job. That's about you. Did you forget this was a date? I have to work there because I love their brand. I love their position in the industry. Who knows what it might be, but it has to be genuine. It's not really possible what John's saying, but if it was, devise the steps needed. How do I align the sun, the moon, the stars, working backwards to open up a pathway, discover those decision makers? By the way, I teach that directly right in the LinkedIn lecture, right with every screen, how you find anybody that you'd like on LinkedIn, including the deciders. But you know, what's their title? Decision maker. Their job's to object to you. So when they object to you, you should be, because it gives you a platform, an opportunity to overcome that objection, to instill confidence in them, to go, I was right. They are this good. Dazzle them, get a meeting, have them create a job or take that job from someone else if necessary. A little more detail here. So I'm going to choose the organizations or companies. That's 30 of them, by the way. Then I'm going to select 25 to 30 individuals using LinkedIn, reverse searching the company. I teach all of that in the LinkedIn lecture. Reverse search the company. I imagine myself here. I'm going to pick people up the food chain. Don't be shy. Up, down, all the way down to admin level for very strategic reasoning. Left and right into a couple surrounding departments. Nice, healthy mix, probably of, in a normal world, all the people I might interact with on a daily basis. Begin to warm up my audience. I select them. I open their profiles, which triggers a marketing event on LinkedIn. 6 people have looked at you. Who's looked at me? If you've not looked at that yet, you certainly will after this. And once you start looking, it's very difficult to stop looking. So you can begin to advertise yourself to 25 to 30 people behind the firewall of the company. Here I am, and here's my nice headline all about why I'm valuable to you. Ask them to connect. Don't wait for an answer because it's completely irrelevant. Answer doesn't really matter. It's a sales process. Open, ask to connect. Now I simply look at those 25 to 30 and pick out the 3, 4, or 5 people I think somehow would be involved in the conversation to hire a person like myself. And then you reach out to those by direct email to their personal email, business, personal, whatever you have access to, but to their email, not things like InMail. Dear Jack, dear Jim, dear Jill, absolutely by first name. I don't care if it's the CEO of the company. It doesn't matter who it is. You have to be an absolute equal to the person. You cannot be equal if you cannot call them by the first name. Dear Jack, dear Jim, dear Jill, I just had to reach out and introduce myself to you. Pause. What does that communicate? I couldn't hold myself back. I have boundless energy. It's a date. I'm so excited by what I see going on at ABC Company. Pause again. You can't blow smoke. Believe me, they know what's going on, but they're excited to hear, oh, what is it? Do tell. I saw that Wall Street Journal article on your new such and such launch. Those things are always so good to get. Be a human being. Speak with them as if you're speaking to a dear old friend. And then at that moment, I picked that article because I have skill I could add to that thing that seems like a success, but it's not yet. And now all I have to do is figure out what I could offer them to get a meeting. Back when I was with XYZ company, I handled a very similar launch. Here comes the carrot. I'd love to come in and meet with you where I could share all the details of how we overcame all those issues I bet your team's probably experiencing. That seems valuable. And then you have to be brave enough to go for the jugular. I have an opening on my calendar. My calendar. Oh my gosh, your words are very, very important. Open on my calendar Tuesday at 10 a.m. One day, one time, never anything different than that. If you're open all next week, I am never meeting with you. You are not busy. You're going to waste my time. Sharp, valuable people are busy and they're booked. Give them one day, one time to react to, and understand that good, bad, or ugly about the day and time, you've already won. They've already psychologically moved past the decision whether you're valuable enough to speak with, and they react to, Tuesday's terrible. Wednesday, 3 o'clock. Oh, perfect. Wow, they went from being psycho to being normal. Yes, you're interrupting the middle of their workday. Don't be put off by those radical shifts in change. Go do what you need to do, which is book a meeting, sell, and repeat this process. Take your first step or whatever that next step is and learn to repeat this and be passionate and be persuasive and engaging and be ready. That's what we have to do. Now, overcoming those objections, it's as simple as finding agreement. If we're going to bring this into our messaging, to find agreement, we simply have to figure out how we're not adversarial. This means we're also going to have to listen through all the minutia, all the noise, for clues that are all around us. But are you listening in the first place? So we're going to have to listen. We're going to have to be persuasive. We're going to have to react. And really, you're going to have to keep continually pushing this message. Oh my gosh. Is everything fine with your sabbatical now? They may be fishing around for details. Absolutely. Gosh, my circumstances have changed. I'm so excited now because I'm allowed the full opportunity to go back and restart my career. And this particular team is one that I know I can add tremendous value to. They want to be reassured. If I roll the dice on you, I'm ready. I'm excited. There it is again. Now, as far as interview, we're going to just touch on a couple things. Next week is my interview intervention lecture, which will have all of the secrets. Review the SelfRecruiter interview checklist. It'll give you a laundry list of things that have to be considered. I have to look at the job itself. I have to do the background on the company. I have to think about the interviewer. It's a date. I have to remember that even though I'm scheduled just with one person, there could be 5 people listening in and even watching that I don't see. You always are playing to a broader audience. What are the questions? What are the answers? What's my agenda? I have to practice until I'm blue in the face. I have to build chemistry, and I have to now do it all on camera, hopefully with a little bit of lighting all around you so you don't look like you're at home in some dark, dingy whatever. By the way, my sister works in the travel industry, and of course, like everybody else, that industry is having a tough time right now, and she goes out and represents one of the counties where she lives, and getting ready for a little bit of a Zoom setup. I was helping troubleshoot something, and I'm like, wow, this is your setup. It's a little dingy. It's a little like in a dark bedroom office. Well, I'm in my dark bedroom office. I'm like, that's not acceptable. We have to create different environment. By the way, I'm standing 3 inches from my wall here. That's a wall right there. I'm standing in a 1 foot square. I don't move from my 1 foot square. I'm standing with lights beating down on me from all directions. And actually, under this, in spite of all the snow, I'm beginning to sweat. It's not about your comfort level. It's about being ready. It's about overcoming every single thing. It's about making sure your energy communicates the right way. And of course, those darn thank you notes. When we've been out on a sabbatical and we have something to explain, my gosh, the follow-up itself becomes part of the test. So in the follow-up, make sure, by the way, a bad way to follow up is, hi, I wanted to follow up on our discussion and see if there's interest. So let me get this straight. You're calling me to see if I'm doing my work? That is not a nice message. That is not a good message. You tend to go back further down the list with that kind of a message. Your excitement has to be the fact that you could not stop thinking about this company, its challenges, and the opportunities that are available to this company, not about you, available to this company since that conversation. That means you probably have come up with something interesting to read that you'd like to share and comment. Oh, I saw this after our discussion and couldn't stop thinking about the challenges we discussed with your competitors. With a link. Hope you enjoy. By the way, I didn't have to say, and you should hire me for the role again. There's a gentle little follow-up reminder that delivers value to them, does not require a response, even though we want one. And that's how you get pushed ahead of your competitor, because you're already doing the job, even though you don't have the job. Of course, you got to be ready for this thing up on screen here, over here, I should say. And that's the best 25 seconds of your life. That is your elevator pitch. Now, in today's world, like in my world, we're often taking that elevator alone, or if it's a very large elevator, we're on the opposite ends of the elevator. But my gosh, if you do get trapped with a person or have that opportunity, is your pitch ready? I think we don't want to hear 2-3 minutes. I think about 20-25 seconds of the most dazzling thing about you that makes you unique and helps me understand your value. That's probably going to be the right thing. That's going to be the thing that makes me think of all these things up on screen about you. That changes the value that I feel about you. Brings us to the end for today's lecture. So on this past Tuesday, we did our LinkedIn Showplace lecture. That's still available over on my YouTube channel. Today is returning to the workforce after a long break or sabbatical. Presentation Guru, very special lecture coming up on Tuesday. And this next Thursday is the interview intervention. I just want to give you just a couple more minutes of commentary on the specifics for different sabbaticals. Since we didn't have the chance for conversation today, I do want us to think about, well, maybe I was home taking care of someone. Maybe I had my own health issue. You know what? Your own health issue is not for public disclosure. Now, if I had my own health issue and I had to take a sabbatical and I dealt with that sabbatical and now I'm ready to go back to work, it's none of their business what the health issue was. So when they go, oh, John, amazing background, by the way. Yeah, they butter you up first to see if you'll confess. They go, oh, so tell me about this sabbatical. You know, I have to say, first off, thank you about your career comments. You don't think I'm going right to the answer on the sabbatical. That could be potentially the trickier or negative piece. I'm going to go back and recount my successes first. Thank you for the nice comments on the background. I have to say, the wealth of experience and growth I went through with these three different organizations, I think it'll be so valuable to you. You know, the sabbatical itself, I have to say that, you know, after working such a long straight run, I had the opportunity to take a break and be able to take care of, you know, some family health issues that had to be dealt with. And the good news is, of course, all that's behind us and I'm ready to get back to work. But, you know, it was a blessing in a way to be able to take time off and deal with those things. And I smile, I look at them in the eyes, I try not to blink until I need to blink. And I dare them to ask me more detail. First off, they cannot legally ask you more detail on those things, especially once I brought up health issues, things that they're not entitled to know. Did you notice that I framed it in such a way that even though it might have been about myself personally, it doesn't really sound like it's really about John, but I'm not really misrepresenting either, because the details are none of their darn business. That's overdone past. And the whole point of the question is it really overdone past? That's why they're asking you the question. And they're looking for you not to provide the more detail, but to convince them it's over, it's done, it is past, whatever it might have been. Or let's imagine you took time off because you had this opportunity to travel around the world. You know what? Just let people live vicariously. It's like, gosh, so tell me, I see you took a year off here. And no, so was that because of the pandemic? And actually, I took it off before the pandemic. I had this chance to be able to take this once in a lifetime opportunity. And you know what? You look at all those dazzling brands and all that spectacular value delivery on my resume, in my background. I hadn't had a career break in so long. I took a sabbatical, and how wonderful and refreshing it was. I'm so excited, though, to get back to work and really about this particular opportunity, right back to them because it's a date. Apply those couple ideas and logic to whatever else your sabbatical might be. Put the guilt aside. Let's get over it. Let's get back in there and fight. Hopefully you can join me this next Tuesday learn all the secrets to becoming a presentation guru, whether that's presenting for your career, because we all have to present a lot these days in the midst of our career, or it could be you representing your business or whatever it might be. Become that presentation guru. That is next Tuesday, this 23rd coming up, and that is at 5 p.m. Thank you guys for joining me today, and we'll see you very, very soon. I'm going to leave you with this. Enjoy. I'm going to bring it full screen.
It has been over 10 years that I've been out of work. So without the training or the skills, you won't get the job. Computer has taken over, and you definitely have to be computer literate in order to get a job. I don't want to check the mail. I want to send a letter.
In New York City, there's a huge financial divide, which really translates into a huge technology divide. Without access to the internet, you can't have access to the same healthcare that other people have. Your ability to increase your education, to apply for financial aid, to apply for school even, those kinds of things are affected without access to technology.
I made my first email account 4 years ago. I never had use for the computer before that. It's the first time I ever really touched a computer. It was with the Brooklyn Educational Opportunity Center. And I kind of started liking it.
I've been out of a job long-term for 4 years. It was a surprise to me that I was unsuccessful at going right out and getting another job like I had always done. Because usually I could just pick a company and go drop off a resume. They were no longer doing that in 2008.
The first thing I remember seeing on the form was, what computer skills do you have? Okay? And at that time, I couldn't check any.
I run into many individuals, especially at my lectures at the library, that don't have internet access at home.
Can't afford it. Because after unemployment wasn't going to pay much more than the rent and buy food.
When you come to the library, you can reserve your computer. You can reserve up to an hour.
You can make a job search at an hour a day, 5 days a week. It could extend a job search for weeks. I can do 2 or 3 applications in a day because they're very long.
In the community center, it is 4 computers for a community of about 3,000 people.
Well, you need an internet account no matter what you do or what level of jobs that you're going after. Let's say I wanted to work for Walmart. Well, it's still an online application process.
A lot of people use their phones, but it's not the same. You can't apply for a job at Target on your phone. The website is not created to do that. Maybe eventually it will be, but right now, that's not how it's set up.
If you don't exist online, you don't exist.